Great.
Okay.
And of course, my neighbor down the road decides now would be a good time to fire up the lawnmower and go push it around his front yard.
Really?
Yeah, can you hear it?
No, I can't.
Oh, okay, good.
But I will tell you this: I have noticed that the universe conspires against us, or at least me, in
Yeah.
that regard. Because at least it happened a lot when I used to make music.
Mhm.
Everything was quiet and silent until the moment I had this genius to me concept in my mind that I wanted to put down in music.
Uh,
And I'd sit down, I'd get everything ready, and like I'm in the mood, like all the chakras are aligned, and I'm ready. And there's something that goes on inside of you, like you feel this energy of like awesomeness is about to happen, whether it's true or not in a
mhm.
general sense, but you feel that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, dogs, people walking across the road, um, cars beeping and honking, airplanes flying low level across your area. It's just like,
Fire trucks.
yeah, just everything. So and this isn't one time. This happens any time that I had been doing this sort of music thing. You, I would get, and it didn't matter when I lived in other locations. It would happen just like that.
Mhm.
So the universe sometimes conspires.
Oh, we're live, aren't we? Jeez. Welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast.
Oh, wait a second. Did you press the button?
No, I guess I don't push buttons around here, man. That gets me in trouble.
Okay, so everything you just okay, so you guys out there, everything you just heard is not part of this transmission. Forget that you heard it completely.
Right.
Today we're talking about plush toys and how they changed our lives.
No. I, to carry on with that thought, though, how much of that is actually true?
Oh,
Because, and I know, because I wonder, because I used to make videos out in my driveway. And sure as hell, the minute I set the camera up and get ready to push the button to start recording, somebody'd fire up a lawnmower, or a dog would start barking,
mhm,
or a fire truck would go by on the highway or something like
mhm.
that, or the next door neighbor decides he's going to test out the new exhaust system
Yeah.
by revving his engine 52,000 times. How much of that was happening already,
No, I'm not
but
going with
we
their.
didn't even pay attention to it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I I knew that this is the option out because it's the only option out if
Mhm.
we're reasonable and sane people. But I'm not gonna allow that one for the purposes of this evening, at least for myself as an
Mhm.
excuse. I'm gonna go with just for the hell of it, and plus I feel like there's something back there too. I'm gonna go with we're in a computer and we're in a machine and we're no because yes I know that option because you
Mhm.
you you explained that one and it's a reasonable out, and the reason
Mhm.
I say it's an out is because the alternative is that literally the universe is there's some sort of console in some sort of room somewhere,
Mhm.
in the control center somewhere, and they're saying, okay, Mark is going to the fridge now. Bring in the monkeys.
Yeah, that's it. Release the flying monkeys.
And that doesn't sound sane.
Yeah. Oh, Greg's got one here. The compressor starts 20 seconds after the record button. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But only when you have something important to say, right, Greg?
Jugglers for some reason appear at your windowsill.
A brass band.
Yeah, just weird stuff like that. And but they're the obviously,
Mm.
um we could let that slide and say it's coincidence and that's the thing. We just
Mhm.
weren't paying attention. It's kind of like when we discussed the issue over. I told you that I had at one time, and we had other discussions, but I told you at one time that I, for the longest time, would see repeated numbers
Mhm.
everywhere I
Yeah.
went. And the number was 107, which happens to be the same number of my street
Mhm.
and address. And I just ousted myself in public. But 107 continues to repeat and repeat and repeat. And so, well, the answer to that you gave to it, and I didn't fight it much. I mean, but it's funny how the brain works
Mhm.
because it is a number that we're familiar with, and we catch it somewhere else. As an
Yeah.
example, automatically our first remembrance of it is like our house number or whatever the heck.
Mhm.
So we make that connection. That number was always there in that street somewhere else.
Right.
I just ran into it and it's something familiar. And so I make the that is the reasonable thing to think. But I
Yeah.
think that there's something else going on as well. But I can't, there's nothing that we can prove. But I think there's something else in our lives, all of us here. And I hate to get in this direction, but I feel that there are unknowns. You know what? I'll leave it at this. Being a human being and alive
Mhm.
with a consciousness, whatever that means, in it, or that we can recognize things around us and have emotions and all that, and sometimes forget certain things for a time and
Sure.
bring them back up later. The whole experience, in my opinion, is sort of like some sort of mystical. You could say, I would say spiritual, but you could say mystical, or you could say if you were like just totally like looking at things as a concrete thing. That's just how life. That's just how it is. I, there's something at the get go incredibly psychedelic, let's say, about the human experience. And, and,
Yeah.
and with that includes all these weird things that we might come across that that that's so mystical, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But the only difference being is the way we handle it, because people got to live. You know, the fire department heading to a fire. Very few people plan a fire. You know, generally speaking, it's an accident.
Unless they have $1 million fire insurance thing waiting.
Exactly. You know, and those are included in those few people. You know, aircraft, you're in Miami for crying out loud. Aircraft fly overhead all the time.
One's
You know,
flying over right now. Actually, it's funny that you said.
exactly. You know, so, you know, and the guy, it's a Saturday afternoon. Of course, people are going to mow the lawns. But so when you got into that mode and you're set and you're ready to go and start recording music, and something like that happened, how did you react to it? What did you do?
My first thought is what I just shared with all of you is that here's the universe again,
Hmm. So,
action,
so
and
what
film
did you
starts
do?
rolling.
So what did you do? Just kind of sit there and keep playing it and put yourself on hold until that passed, and then get in and record, or
I
how'd you
at
handle it?
first when it first started happening, I
Hmm.
would go, but
Hmm.
then after, and I'm talking years, I started going, yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Really?
Like I know, and I'm telling you, it's something like, have you ever had a, have you ever had a, I mean, there's no way of making rhyme or reason out of it.
No.
The most reasonable within the world that we live in
Hmm.
that I've thought of is what you're suggesting, which is, well, we didn't pay attention, and our attention, depending on where we're focused, if something starts to sound the alarms over here and we change our view, now we're focused on that, and then connections occur and we're like, oh
Sure.
wow, that. And so yes, it's sort of like a stumbling about,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we're paying attention to something else, and then something looks like a pattern that's unique to us, and so that's reasonable to me. Like if somebody
Hmm.
came and said that like you have, I'd have, well, zero. I mean, it's soothing, because the
Hmm.
alternative is it the alternative is soothing too in a way, but none of it is really you can't necessarily
No, you,
completely rubber stamp it, necessarily, not completely.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can't pin it down to any cause and effect or anything like that, because you know people have lives and they're going to do what they're going to do. And there is, I firmly believe there is such a thing as coincidence. You know, me getting ready to open my mouth to say something into a microphone coinciding with somebody firing up their lawnmower.
Hmm.
I don't even know what house that was at, let alone whether or not I know the person mowing their lawn.
Hmm.
100% coincidence. So the way I would handle it is just go anyway, unless it was so loud I couldn't I didn't think I could be heard in the microphone, I would go ahead and just record the video anyway,
Yeah.
because real world happens. Dogs bark,
Hmm.
people mow their lawn, cars drive by.
Hmm.
It doesn't annoy me, and I seriously doubt it annoys somebody else. I'm not trying to make broadcast quality stuff.
It annoys the crap out of me. I can tell you that much.
Now, in your situation, you are trying to get a good, clean sound recording of some music you want to record. That's a completely different topic. I'm not shooting for that level of pristine sound, pristine audio. I don't
Hmm.
need that. And it kind of, I saw the irony in me demanding the world settle down and shut up so I can say 3 words and turn on a loud machine and record it.
Could you imagine the Beatles being born in somewhere in the South Pacific in some village, and they're trying to record something, and there's like, there's huts and people are clank, and you hear sheep, and
Well,
it's like, we're trying to record our number. It's like
well,
there's nothing between the what do you call the straw between one wall or the other, and they're like,
well,
action, record, and just,
there's
you
a
know,
reason why they didn't record when they were in India. You know,
I
they
mean,
didn't cut an
cowbells, gling, gling, gling,
yeah,
gling.
they didn't cut an album while they were there talking to the Maharaja.
You hear somebody frying stuff. How much? $2, $2. And it's like, and they're trying to record like help.
Yeah,
It's
you might as well try to record in the kitchen of a busy Chinese restaurant. So
that's why they. That's why. Well, obvious. Well, now that we say that, obviously, other people must have experienced such things because human beings eventually found the idea of encasing a room in a room and creating what we now call music recording studios that are hermetically sealed.
acoustically, yeah.
So that would, like removing the mysticism part, you would think, oh, it must be that a series of musicians across time have found that noise sort of tries to creep in anyhow.
Yeah.
So that is but I will say this though, Mark, this sort of
Uh-huh.
thing, which like, so this sort of thing of like coincidence and this and that, um there are weird sort of um more upper tier. I would place it as an upper tier, sort of like, I don't want to call them predictions, but evidences or curiosities. Let's say, let's leave it at that. Where even at the photon level, which we've discussed before, and so there's this thing in science, and you'd have to go in, but I'm just giving you the broad view. In order for one to look at a cell or a light photon or a whatnot or whatever, in order for one to, or better yet, when one looks is when that manifests. When one does not look, that cell, that thing does not manifest. There's a whole thing with that, and
Yeah.
there's people arguing that big time, but the key here is that there is something to do with the observer observing something where that something now exists, and when they don't observe it, see, there's a lot going on with that, and people arguing that they dismiss it, but other scientists are like, well, wait a second, look at, so it's almost like, I'll leave it at this, it's almost like when you play a video game, some video games, in order for it to contain all the information it can, every room you walk into is being created at the moment. All
Hmm.
the assets from that imagery is being placed there the moment you cross the hallway into a next video game
Right.
room. So it didn't exist prior to that. If you would have taken a left turn, that
Hmm.
other room doesn't exist until you
Right.
decide to enter it. So there's a lot of
Well, if
like,
you remember old video games, in fact, that were still being played off a disc and things had to load at the time, you would cross one threshold and it would, be a second. They'd say, please
yeah,
wait. And then it would load the next room. I mean,
yes,
we're talking way back now. I mean, on Commodore 64 and things like that, because
yeah,
you're right, it didn't exist. So, what can you say? But that you're right, that is being argued in that it goes back to the old, if a tree falls in the forest,
yeah.
and there's nobody there to hear it, doesn't make any sound. Well,
Hmm.
what do you consider sound, and this, that, and the other. I mean, if you put an instrument there, it can record it, and then you can hear it after the fact. Or if you put a seismic instrument, it can register the impact and all this, that, and the other. But does that count as sound and all this other good stuff? There are people arguing that, with a hell of a lot more intelligence than I
At a
have, for sure.
at a level, you
Mhm.
could, with what you just said, make the argument. Well, what were you? So at one level, you could say that everything that exists because you are consciously observing it.
Right. It's
If
it's
you
down to
remove
perception. Yeah.
if you remove the you
Mhm.
and your existence and your ability to perceive, that is in a sense the end of things that exist.
Mhm.
Even though you can, in this scenario, one can say, well, if I don't exist, other people exist. Yeah, well, it's the same difference. Because in a sense, as far as we know, we are the observer. As far as we know, without our ability to
Well,
observe.
yeah, and without the ability to observe through someone else's eyes, I can look at something and say it's green because I know what green means to me. And you could look at it and say, yeah, I agree, that's green, because you know what green looks like and what it means to you. But I don't know how that looks in your head, and you don't know how that looks in my head. It's just that we've associated that word green with that particular color.
Mhm. Yeah, we have
You
that
know.
reference point to. It's kind of the same story as what you said the last time or the time before last, when you said something to the effect of, "Oh well, if you had to explain what a left and right is to an alien,
Mhm. Through a radio transmission with no visual cues at all.
how would
Would
you
you?
go about doing that?" And so we
Yeah.
went into that and stuff like that. So without certain cues, it's practically a very difficult thing to. And yeah,
Mhm.
it's a series of complications,
Sure.
involved. But needless to say, there are things we consider coincidences,
Mhm.
or we dismiss as coincidences. I don't know if it's a dismissal. It's just our mind
Well, it's acceptance,
noticing.
I think.
It's just our mind saying, "Oh, I just connected that with what happened 5 days ago."
Mhm.
In this moment, my mind just went, "Hey, these two things match." Kind of like which block fits inside the
Mhm.
little. My brain just matched those two items together, and now I
Right.
see a pattern. Holy crap! There's
Right.
patterns and it's given to us too. It's not like we're engaged in the
Well,
process
no.
consciously.
And a lot of it is, but a lot of it could, that was real profound what you just said right there. A lot of it could be subconscious, because you were talking about the number 107 being a recurring number to you.
Mhm.
And there's a phrase for this phenomenon, and I can't remember what it is, repeating digit syndrome or something like that.
Oh, great.
But I have talked to Linda about this before. The one that keeps coming back to me on clocks, specifically on digital clocks, is 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if it's the fact that I happen to look at a digital clock when it's 12:34, or if I only remember the times that I look at the clock and it says 1, 2, 3, 4, because that number stands out, you know. But I don't remember all the times that it said 8:07 or 4:06, because
Mhm.
those numbers don't mean anything to me. I couldn't tell you how many times I've looked at a digital clock and it said 107, because those numbers don't mean anything to you. It has meaning to you. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4 doesn't have any specific meaning to me either, other than they're in sequence, you know.
Mhm.
But it's just one of those things. And I'll point it out to Linda when it happens. See, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And it
Right.
reinforces the act of remembering or recalling it for the next
Right.
time. Um,
Now,
some people go ahead.
Now that doesn't have any kind of a mystical meaning to me, just looking at a digital clock and seeing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mhm.
But if I went down and got a new telephone and the last four digits of the number were 1, 2, 3, 4, And then I was going on vacation, and the address of the hotel we booked was 1234. And they put us in room 34 on the 12th floor. Now we're getting freaky. Now we're getting weird here. But I think it kind of being is situational, you know.
Well, if you think of what we've talked about parts of this, but if you think of what you are,
Mm-hmm.
you if you so at one level, if you think of what you if you were to stop right now and begin the process of describing in full detail what you
Mm-hmm.
are, what you, Mark Lindsay, are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just everything that you can possibly lay out to include not only physical but internal and the things you that you can't quite grasp onto because they're things of like memory slash visionary. Because I mean, there's things that happen in the head that are just like sort of like tossing paint on a
Right.
canvas. So there's all these things and things that don't become concrete as far as ideas. Well,
Right.
if you were to do all that, you would have to spend the rest of your existence and a couple others in order to fill that up just with you. Now,
Right.
if one's lazy about it, well, I'm a dude that lives over here, and I like this, and that, and I'm over because I want to see a movie. If you do that,
Mark
yeah,
Lindsay, Aries. I like puppies and long walks on the
right.
beach. You
So
know.
you could do that, and then you could be, you know. And by the way, if you were to
Mhm.
do that long profile that I just explained, like let's say on some sort of dating app or something,
Mhm.
could you imagine? Yeah, everybody will swipe, or you know how they have that little swiping feature,
Mhm.
because it's too much. It's too much information. I'm an open book. Here I am, folks. You know, but
Mhm.
joking aside, if you were to do that, it would be way too complex due to the
Yeah.
brain and this and that. Um,
Yeah, and then the people looking at it would go, "What a nut burger." Not to mention the fact that Linda would get seriously pissed at me that I was on that dating app to begin with.
what was this when he was 4 years old? All
Yeah,
that
really.
awash in diaper poop. You know, I did that when I was a kid. I see. Let's not go there.
Yeah,
Let me
let's
get to the
not.
point. My mom walked in and said, "What are you doing?" And I was just like, it was horrible. I remember it. Let's put it that way because of my mom's
Well, now
reaction.
and now none of us will never be able to forget it.
I'm sure it wasn't a lot, but thinking in well, anyways, going back. I mean, not that that helps.
Yeah, just so back to the other subject.
Not that that helps. But okay, so the where I was going with it. So if you were to lay that all that out, it would be
Mhm.
so much.
Mhm.
Um, you do have all that information with you to the degree that you do,
Mhm.
but you don't have access to all of it at the same time.
No,
So
no.
because you're limited, and I'm limited, and humans are limited, um, we can only have access to portions of things at a time. And
Mhm.
so, what am I getting at? Um, we are not omnipresent and omni aware and all that. As far as we know, in order for us to even move around, we have to have windows or blinds um,
Yeah, we have to be able to.
minimized
Yeah.
in order for, because if we allowed all things that we know or are capable of knowing to come out of us or into us at the same time, um, we couldn't function. You couldn't open a door. Not
Well,
there's too much.
and that just kind of lends credence to my theory of that, how much of the vehicle traffic, how many of the dogs barking, how many of the lawnmowers were going on before we decided to hit that record button. It's just we now notice it because we have pulled those blinders back a little bit and become more aware of our surroundings. And instead of focused on that one thing, now we're more aware of our surroundings. Oh, damn dog, will you stop barking? I'm getting ready to record. Like
At
the
some
dog, A, like the dog cares, B, like the dog understands, and C, like I'm in any kind of position of authority to demand anything out of anybody. Yeah.
The important part
Mhm.
of what you just said, in my opinion,
Mhm.
what is it? Is it that everything was going on anyhow?
Mhm.
Or that you decided to shift views and then certain windows or possibilities revealed themselves to you, bringing it to your consciousness?
Mhm.
What I'm getting at is that the act of you observing or taking initiative to focus on something opens up whole doorways and
Oh
hallways
yeah.
down a different path. So it also returns us to you, the observer, in this world. And it also returns to the fact of, well, they have studied the issue and they say that photons aren't doing what they would be doing unless you're looking at them.
Mhm.
Cells, there's a whole, like, you could get lost in it. But people that honestly are studying these things do not manifest themselves at the molecular level the way you would assume they do. Once you start observing something, things start to change. and
Right.
and and although that sounds nuts, it's some sort of phenomenon that occurs. People are going back and forth with that. So
Oh yeah.
there's something
And it
interesting
depends
there.
on how deep in the weeds you want to get into it as well, because again, you're into observation and perception, and no two people observe or perceive at the same rate, at the same speed, or even the same thing at the same time. You know what I mean? So there's relativity involved it with two people standing next to each other looking at the exact same thing.
Oh
I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah,
So
your window into the world, even though we share X amount of
mhm.
similarities in terms of physical, like, there's a thing that they say where, like, humans compared to dogs, like, so dogs as an example, um, they know that you're you and I'm me and all this and that. They don't know that a couch is a couch.
Nope. Yeah.
And the significance of a couch, it's just something in their way. If it suits their needs, they'll use it for that need. Or if they
Hmm.
feel like, unless they're taught to respect this object, but when
Yep.
you're
Don't get on the couch. In
right,
which
they
case
don't,
they just wait till you leave, then they party on it.
yeah, but they don't know
Mhm.
why. They just know that you're displeased with
Right.
certain activity and they shift to remain in your graces.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
so there's that.
Mhm.
They don't, but we do have something which we call this sort of, I don't know.
The ego. And that's involved with it all too. And that's where I was going with myself, expecting the entire world to just shut up so I can say these four words, then make a bunch of noise myself. Never mind the fact that maybe my next door neighbor worked the night shift and is trying to sleep. See, I'm worried about my ego is worried about people interrupting me, but I'm not worried about interrupting other people. And that made me stop, back up, regroup, and rethink a lot of the things I do. I used to think nothing of getting up and going out in an uninsulated shop at 6 in the morning and just fire things up because I wanted to. Now I give my neighbors until about 8:30. I figure if you ain't out of bed until 8:30, or out of bed by 8:30, hey, the street sweeper's been by, the garbage dude's been by, the mail truck has already been around, everybody's out making noise. I'm going to join in on the symphony.
Yeah,
So that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. There's some something to be said about that. But as
Common
far as we
courtesy.
as far as we know, though,
Hmm.
the reality is that to go to your ego thing. Well, I don't know if it's the reality of it. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
'cause it fit
it's
well in that.
your reality. Speak your truth, brother.
No, and I wasn't saying it for me. No, see, you're adding to
I'm
something.
messing with you.
No, but you're adding to something that, and that's not really where I was going.
Mm.
Um, but it's still a bias, right? So
Yeah,
one is still stuck in it. So,
sure.
but anyways, the reality is, using that loosely because it just fits nice in
Yeah,
this sentence for some reason. But it's not necessarily, the truth of the
yeah.
matter. Um, or the observation that I'm proceeding with is that Um, there's no mark. I could use anybody in the sense. Let's use
Sure.
you at the risk of. But let's. There's no mark that, although he's aware of other people around, that could necessarily feel the plight of someone in some place that
No,
got stuck in a mountain. That
no.
person exists,
Hmm.
but Mark isn't in their shoes, in their
No,
locale, in order to feel these things. Mark, um, at best, observes from his vantage point out into the world with
right.
the faculties that, for whatever reason, he exists, and because he can reflect them from his point of view. At best, Mark can see someone trip and fall and say, "Oh, that had to have hurt," and you feel it. Um, um,
Sure. At the moment, kind of an empathetic thing. Yeah.
Vicariously, you feel this thing because you have empathy or whatnot, and there's different levels of empathy. Some people watch somebody drop flat on their face and they're
And
like,
just laugh. Yeah.
or not even feel a darn thing. They just look at it. The person splayed out on the ground. They're going, ah,
Hmm.
ah, and they're looking at the person, and so there's all sorts of levels of this kind
Sure.
of thing. Um, but as far as you know, that you can't really, other than wow, I'm human and that person is human. Other than that,
Yeah.
all we have is our vantage point observation.
And that's what I mean when I had to step back, regroup, and rethink a lot of things, is because I can only control the things that I can control.
Yeah,
And in that examination, that self-examination, I was amazed at the number of things I can't control. The number of things that are completely and totally A, none of my business, and B, totally irrelevant to me and my life, my livelihood. They're going to happen whether I'm there or not, and how much of it I could actually control. Yes, I can control to a certain degree when I leave the house. Everything has to line up. The car has to start. The front door has to lock, and I don't have to fiddle with it for 15 minutes and other things like that. But for the most part, I'm in control of when I leave the house. I'm not control of when all the other people on the road leave their houses.
let's stop for half a second. Let me ask you this:
Mhm.
why is it so important that you have control?
That's what I had to reestablish. That's what I had to think about. That's what I had to get through my brain, that look, you're not in control of these things. Why are you getting pissed off about it? The guy that's doing 10 miles an hour into the speed limit in front of you, he didn't synchronize watches with you the day before and say, yeah, Mark should be leaving about now. I'm going to go get on the road so that I can get in front of him and go really slow. That didn't happen.
But
But that didn't stop my reaction to getting behind that guy. Push all the pedals. One of them's the gas. Well, yeah, come on. I got things to do. Like
yeah,
I'm important or something
you
like
don't break
that.
down into that every now and then. Anyhow, I do all the
Oh, yeah,
time.
every
Although I
once in a
recognize,
while. Every once in a while, sure.
yeah, because sometimes it's like, well, anyways,
Green means go, Mr. Stupid Man in front of me. Green
you
means
can't
go.
help. Look, so you can't help. But when obstacles get in the way, and so I'm going to put that to the side because my question to you was, why is it so important for you to be in control? The question is, why is it? What is the thing about being in control? What does that itself mean and matter? What's the importance and why?
That was the question.
Well, can
That
you
was the
answer it?
question. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. All I know is it was. I can't tell you why. And that was why it was easier for me than some other people to just say, look, knock it off. You're
Mhm.
not in control. You don't have to be in control. And it's not important that you are in control. But, there are certain things that happen regardless. there are certain things that we do to ourselves. And I think maybe that was it. I think maybe it was part of it was ego, that yes, I know what I'm doing. And yes, I'm in charge of my destiny and this, that, and the other. And to a certain degree, in some things, maybe that's right. But more often than not, it's not. You're not in control because you don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen 30 seconds from now. A meteorite might hit me as I sit right here in my chair, in which case you're going to have one hell of a video to post on your channel.
The longer
But
out you go, the longer out your prediction or the longer out the window is, the less
Mhm.
predictable. The shorter
Right.
instance, although it's 100% not guaranteed, but at the
Mhm.
shorter instance, there seems to be this fall off of, yeah, not much is going to be shaken with it, but that's not 100% true. But the
Right.
longer out your vision goes, the more
Mhm.
uncertain the space
Right.
becomes.
And the more blurry it becomes. And I agree with that 100%. I kind of visualize that kind of a projection, that kind of a, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. It's kind of looking down a tunnel. The
Mhm.
further you look, the narrower it gets and the more out of focus the things on the other side are.
Mhm.
When you get, as you're getting closer, colors become more distinct and forms take better shape,
Mhm.
So yeah.
There's too
Um,
many there's too many variables the further out things go, but the closer you are.
sure.
Let me give you one half example. There's some, this is kind of like circular, but at the same time I think it's worth saying, in comparison to, like, let's say the airplanes and the noise
Mhm.
and whatnot. There are days
Mhm.
where for some reason I knock over just about half of everything that I run across.
Yeah.
I'll knock over cups of water.
Mhm.
I'll just everything falling. I'll grab something and I miss it quite a little bit, and it
Mhm.
falls over, just like back to back. And I'm thinking, oh, is this one of those days? I've gotten to the point.
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you because I know
yeah,
exactly what you mean.
yeah.
I've put my pants on in 62 years of life. I have put my pants on, I don't know how many times. I don't think I can count that high. But that one time you get your toe stuck in a waistband, I'm convinced that's why so many old people break hips. It's because that one time you get your toe caught in a waistband, you don't know what the hell to do and you end up falling over.
Yeah,
So I know exactly what you're talking about. So
yeah.
um Greg had one here. Well, Jim Dockrell, first of all, said, I found out it was easier to leave early than to drive faster. I will agree with that, and I have fewer tickets. You want to get somewhere one light quicker, leave the house earlier. But Greg had a good one here. Why is it that when I go to check my truck tire pressure, the valve stem is always on the bottom on all four wheels, making me bend over further?
You can't account for stuff like that. You can't, because if you think about it, unless Greg, I will say, your trajectory when you take your truck out is the same mileage and same turns at the same speed at the same moment at the same stop signs. And so when you get back for the past like 10, 15, 20 years to your house, you've made the exact same return, so that that little valve ends up roughly on the bottom again.
On all four wheels. Personally, if that ever happened to me, if I ever parked and
Don't
all
say
of
it.
my valve stems were down at the I'd take a picture of it and share it on Facebook,
You
because
see,
that just don't happen.
I was gonna say he needs his tires rotated.
Well, that is true. But yeah,
See,
I
you
mean,
see
when
what
you think about it, you turn a corner, this wheel turns slower than this wheel. So.
he's got to be doing the same trajectory so that it aligns.
Yeah.
Or you could be in what some have in the darker sides of the internet called the tire valve gremlins that come at nighttime.
I was going to say, unless somebody's messing with him and jacking up his truck and putting him that way, every night. Robin has a better answer. God wants you to bend over. There you go. There you go. Consider it cardio, Greg. You can't get in your steps. You're going to have to get in your bend overs.
It still doesn't solve the why. Why is this happening? And
Well,
anybody that reads a book or something or this or that or watches a movie
Mhm.
kind of nobody wants to not know the why. I mean, there's
Sure.
some people that may be satisfied without knowing the why, but there's no such entertainment that doesn't give you the payoff.
I want to know. The why is, yeah, that's curious, but I want to know the how. How do they end up all four of them down at the bottom of the wheel?
Well, we'd have to question Greg precisely because the way he's explaining it, it's almost as if they're all in perfect alignment, unless the way we don't know the details. It could
No,
be
we don't,
like,
because it may be, that's happened twice or three times and not every single time. If it is every single time, I would look for somebody that's messing with you,
and I, as
because
my
that's
advice, would drive one more time around the
the block.
7-Eleven block
Yeah, really.
just to test out the difference.
Yeah, and if you notice that, Greg, why do you go ahead and fill up your tires right there? Why don't you hop in and back up about half a revolution so that they're all on the top and you don't have to bend over that far?
That's a good.
Hop in and back up a foot, foot and a half, bring them up to the top.
It's funny, talking about cars. So my very trusty, for going on since 2005, um that truck, at this point, there's so many like the windows don't roll down. At first one window wouldn't roll down, but every now and then it would roll down and up as I tried, with the electric thing, and then it stopped doing it. But luckily, I had the other window that would roll up and down. But then it started not wanting to every now and again, until finally it just decided not to do it. My light console sometimes turns on off and this and that, and
Yeah.
one door doesn't open from the outside, so I have to go around and open from the inside, then close the other one. The little locks, I guess the claws that lock in the door when you close it. Sometimes the little thing just dangles. You have to lift the latch in order for it to actually close properly. Um, One time I was at the Home Depot, and I'm talking about a few things. There's many more things. The paint is like
Yeah.
faded away. I mean, it's just when it rains, I need to fill some silicone on because the border of the
Weather stripping is gone.
yeah. So there's one drop that falls right on my seat, and like my
Mhm.
butt's wet when I'm driving. So I'm driving down the thing. I got to do all that. But one time I was at the Home Depot and I went and got some stuff. I forget what it was, and I come back. I get in the car and I'm ready to go. I turn. Oh, and it drives like a horse. So it's
Mhm.
almost like you're galloping across the lanes. You're
Mhm.
not necessarily. Yeah, the shocks.
So you've
And
got an Uncle Buck mobile.
I mean, 100%. So I turn on the ignition and I back up, and some other car backed up at the same time and knocked my butt with their butt,
Mhm.
and I stopped, and all of a sudden, certain lights that weren't functioning started functioning again from that from that point on, and have been since then. So all it took is a little bit of love. It's hilarious.
In the Army, we called that percussive maintenance. And the manual for it was basically hit it with a bigger hammer,
Yeah.
I've
So it's
had
like,
cars like that. You slam the door and the car doesn't stop rocking for a minute and a half, just go
yeah,
over a set of railroad. I got pulled over. I went over a set of railroad tracks and a light bulb fell out of the taillight assembly. So I was driving along with one taillight and a cop pulled me over and he says, I can see that there's something in there, but what's going on? I popped the trunk, the light bulb's laying in the trunk, stuck it back up in there. Now I fixed it, duct tape.
yeah.
And then when it fell out in a year and a half, I put more duct tape on it.
Well, my turn signals when it rains profusely.
Mhm.
One of them, or I think both at this point, starts getting full of water. So when you walk to the back, you see like a fishing a fish tank with
Mhm.
water inside.
Yeah.
With the light, it's working and everything. It's ridiculous.
Every boat trailer in this valley has the same. The taillights are full of water. I think it's a law. I don't know. I
It's
think personally, I think there's a hole in the top and they fill it up, make you think they've been fishing.
it's hilarious as hell. Um, Yeah, there you go.
Oh man. Okay, Greg says the reason he doesn't back up or pull forward a little bit is the hose won't reach. Man,
You
you're
know,
Greg. Okay,
give me one
I'm
sec. Let
I'm
me turn.
fixing to be disappointed here. You are not going to sit there and tell me that you go down to the gas station to fill up the air in your tires with all of the compressors and hoses and the mechanics tools you've got in your house in that shop. You're not going to tell me you drive to the gas station to put air in your tires. Because I won't believe it. I will not believe it.
You could install multiple valves on every corner, right? You can do some a little bit of, and so
Yeah,
no matter how it stops, now you have
yeah.
you
And
could do
then what you do, you get the little valve caps that light with LEDs in them that light up as they spin. So it looks like, you're driving down the road with, instead of one little whoop, 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 have 16 of those son of a guns in a circle. And it just looks like
you
one
could
of those
also add some
pinwheel fireworks.
hydraulics
Hmm.
so that when you're driving down the road, you drive down the kind of like how they do down in LA.
The
Hell
lowriders.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we were talking about before, but that's okay because I think our discussion on that kind of dovetails into the little thing I've had in the back of my mind that I told you about earlier, and that is regrets. We're talking about old junky cars and everything. And I'm not just picking on cars, anything at all that you have purchased. What has been your number one regret? The one thing that you bought that made you think, I wish I never would have got that. I really regret buying that.
Man, I have to think on that because nothing comes to mind. Oh well, back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
what was cool was those MC Hammer parachute pants,
Mm-hmm.
and not to mention I was into rock and roll, but clothing and rock and roll and fashion. It was at one point I bought. My mom bought. I asked her, "Oh, mom, please, I want." And there were these yellow parachute pants that looked like Aladdin pants type of whatnot with polka dots on them.
Dang.
And I wore that to school. Well, here's the thing: the fashion it was cool in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I wore it to school. Nobody said anything because it was like people were wearing all sorts of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But throughout the day, I had this feeling of I feel like such an idiot wearing this crap. I had a feeling of it the whole day, and when I came back, took them off. I never wore them ever again. It's just
It was that bad, huh?
it was the feeling like I instantaneously knew that didn't match me whatsoever. I'm
Yeah.
not some rap guy,
Mm-hmm.
this is none of that.
Yeah.
My standard, and because of that, I've always been very basic with I dress with jeans and just
Mm-hmm.
normal because maybe that influenced. I felt this is so. I feel so out of place. Like to me, the standard jeans and a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like exotic. It's a Jimi Hendrix, but it's still within the t-shirt world, so
Yeah.
I can wear comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
But if one starts getting no, I think that may have partially influenced mine.
Well, I'm kind of the same way as far as clothes are concerned. I mean, this here, it's a blue shirt with the gray sleeves and then the gray going up to the gray
This
collar
is
and
fashion
everything.
hour.
This is as wild as I get, and this is the only shirt like this I have. I mean, I've got tons of t-shirts with logos on them.
You've never tried anything with glitter?
I almost said no, but
Oh
I
crap!
have to think about, and I didn't buy it. It was a gift, and I still love it. I still have it. My daughter Lee bought me a t-shirt for it was either Father's Day or my birthday, and I really don't remember which. But she knew I was a major Stevie Ray Vaughan fanatic, and she bought me a t-shirt with Stevie on the front, and on the back was a huge picture. It was a representation of an oil painting kind of a thing, of him with the guitar up, and he's got that stank face, and he's jamming on it. And it but it was him on stage, and there were spotlights and this, that, and the other in the background, and there may have been glitter in the spotlights.
Yeah, that's gonna be okay.
But
Still, it's a little wild.
yeah,
It's a little you're pushing the envelope there, but
but
it's still within the norm because it's
I
part of the picture.
loved that shirt. I wore heck out of it. I'm too rotund to fit it now, but it's still in my chest of drawers. And God, she got me that. Holy cow.
Now, if you had one with
In the
glitter
90s.
writing that says bedazzled on it, then
Yeah.
I would have been worried. But in this scenario, I think you're completely within the safe
Yeah,
zone.
I just I'm not very flashy. I mean, the flashiest things that I wear are t-shirts with logos on them.
You'll never make it to one of those red carpet whatchamacallits with that attitude.
We can only hope. We can only
How do
hope. I
you
have
how
no desire to do that. None
you,
whatsoever.
you've never in the middle of the night, and forgive me folks because I'm going to ask him this question because it's about time we just laid this on the table. You're not going to sit here in front of all these people and tell me I'm, I'm laying it on I'm laying it on thick, and I don't know. You're going to tell me that you have never thought to yourself, this weekend we're tripping the lights fandango and we're just painting the town and we're gonna dolly up to no end and it's gonna be just no.
No. No. If Linda and I have a free weekend, we're thinking of like, run away to the coast or something like that,
Normal.
because that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, because see, there's something the I there are people that live their lives with the clothes and they look good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel that I'm that type of person. I feel
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of a just regular, you know.
You know what a highbrow dinner is to us? Something we don't get in a bag at the drive-thru. That's a highbrow dinner to us. If we go in and sit down, we're fancy.
Steak and ale.
Yeah, if we go in, sit down, and a waitress comes over, takes my order, and then brings the food later on, this is high society. That ain't us. We're just not. No, we have delivered. Yeah, delivered pizza. That's a treat too. You know.
Back in the 80s, there was a lot going on.
Mm,
And one such thing was, well, my grandmother,
mhm.
I forget, it was sometime in the early to mid 80s. And my at least I get fancy once a week. I change my slippers. Do you have a drawer and like or in your closet you open up and your slippers and they're all the same color?
let me show you how bad this is. If I sit down and put on socks, Linda's like, "Where are we going? What's the occasion?"
So let me just say in the 80s, at some
Mhm.
point in the early to mid 80s, my grandmother came home. She was already living here where I'm at. So that means it was after 83.
Mhm.
So it was 83, 84, 85. One of
Yeah.
those. Probably 83. And she gave me a gift and my mom was there and they gave me a wrapped gift.
Mhm.
And she says, "Open it up." And I'm like, "Okay, it's a gift, and stuff." And remember, at this early age, one is
Mhm.
thinking of toys and all the stuff that kids clothes is not really an interest.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I'm not like, whatever. Um, and I opened it up and I pulled out this pleather, stretchable vinyl, red with zippers replica of Michael Jackson's "Beat It"
Mhm.
shirt.
Oh, okay. That jacket? Yeah.
It wasn't a jacket; it was the actual undershirt.
Oh, okay.
So it's a stretchy that sticks to your and it's
Mhm.
all like a leathery slash
Mhm.
vinyl. And my mom, oh, look how great, that's like Michael Jackson, because he was all the rage. I mean,
Sure.
he was big time.
Oh, I know. I
And I
remember.
was like, I was like horrified. I looked, it was red. Number one, it was red. The whole thing was red.
Mm,
And remember, boys, I mean, I know we've talked about that back in the day, pink was masculine and blue wasn't, but I'm not from back in the day, that back in the day.
me
To
either.
me, and so even though red has no, I hate to be controversial because we're living in 2023, but even though red has no gender connotations
Mhm.
back in the 80s, because you could calmly wear something red,
Yeah, red was cool.
but red, sleeves cut off, zippers,
Hmm.
not cotton, but some sort of plasticky type thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that horrified. And since I had no say in it and had to please my grandmother, and she was as happy as can be, and my mom was happy, they're like, look, it's Michael Jackson. This is like, and I was like, I have pictures of my birthday where that's what I had to wear. And I
Yeah.
just had to accept it. So in a set of pictures,
Hmm.
I'm sitting there with all my friends, dressed normal with shirts and whatnot, and I'm sitting there all Michael Jacksoned out. It was just hilarious.
Yeah. Everybody has a story like that. Grandma or mom or aunt so and so got you something and you had to wear it to please them, basically. Well,
Yeah.
where's that beautiful shirt that I got you last summer? Oh, I don't
Mhm.
fit it anymore. Well, you haven't grown any. I don't fit it anymore.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
I even got,
Okay.
I think they call penny slippers or loafers,
Or
penny
penny
loafers.
loafers. Yeah.
I was even given penny loafers by them,
Hmm.
shiny, and then and they I opened the box and I'm like looking at this thing. Remember in the 80s, you're not thinking penny loafers.
No.
But my people were
Hmm.
from way back in the day when
Yeah.
that was a thing, and so they're like, "Look, these are penny loafers," and I'm looking at my mom horrified again because number
Hmm.
one, they're dress type shoes, and how good is this going to be for me when I'm trying to run around Sweetwater all day?
Yeah.
And she said, and you can put a penny in it or a nickel, or you can put right inside.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? It was so perplexing. It was just weird stuff that you had to just accept as part of the world that you lived in.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, that's our perception. But I'm with you. There was so much like that. I mean, my grandfather used to wear, I mean, up until the day he died, he wore so much. He called it pomade. It was a gel called Dippity Doo.
Mhm.
He put so much of this gel in his hair. I think he washed it 3 times a year because the gel was so thick in there, water wouldn't penetrate. And I still don't know if they ran him through the car wash or what. And when I was little, I didn't know any better. So I want some of that too because grandpa does it. Oh, okay, here we go. And I hated the way it felt. And then it started to melt and it's, running down your forehead and, oh, that's going to drip in your eyes, honey. And, take a tissue to it. I wanted it out almost before he finished putting it in my hair.
Yeah.
No, no. And basically the way that got cured was about 2 weeks later, mom took me down to get a haircut and I had to have a flat top.
Mhm.
And I wore a flat top until I was like 6 or 7 just to get rid of that so I couldn't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
But oh man.
Yeah, that was a style. People would grease it back,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I remember my dad. Like he always had sideburns. I have sideburns,
Mm-hmm.
and he always
Yeah.
had his hair
Mm-hmm.
greased back.
Do you remember the big mutton chop sideburns?
Hmm.
I mean, way out here, almost looking like
Yeah.
somebody stole your mustache. Oh man. Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The dumbest thing about the 70s was the way we dressed. So, I mean, it just depends on what generation you are. I would imagine some of the things that you wore you think is pretty dumb now, looking in reflection. I know some of the things that I wore was pretty dumb, but I'm kind of, you know,
Yeah, I
I'm
mismatched
pretty
a lot
vanilla.
of. Yeah, I mismatched a lot of things. It's just you're growing and you're
Hmm.
thinking, oh, this is a good idea.
Yeah. Well, I kind of stood out in my high school because I was one of the few people that was still wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt. Occasionally, I would wear a button-up shirt, but once I got into high school, mom kind of loosened the reins on what I could be seen leaving the house in. When I was younger, it was you had school clothes, you had play clothes. And I still have that mentality to this day. Um, you have good clothes, nice slacks, and a nice button down shirt that you wear for certain things, for certain places
Occasions, yeah.
or certain situations. You don't go to Christmas dinner wearing, holy Levi's and a holy t shirt. And in order to keep those looking nice, when I'm out mowing the lawn or something, I got a pair of blue jeans that's got paint on them. It's got grease stains and this, that, and the other. They're clean. They've been washed. It's just they're stained up and messed up. Those are
Yeah,
my work.
permanently.
Yeah, those are my work pants. And I've
Mhm.
got t-shirts with holes in them and the underarms are ripped out of them and, shoes that are half falling apart. But I wear those when I'm going to be out getting messed up so I don't mess up my good stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I've not been a fashion bug
me
necessarily.
either.
Well, not even necessarily. Like you could stamp it. I've not.
Exactly. I don't know if I'm behind or if I'm ahead for when it rolls around again, you know, because I think blue jeans and t-shirts will come back. Uh,
I think that there's never gonna go away.
Now, Jerry at Polly Wants a Crafter said, thank God we got out of the bell bottoms and curtain print butterfly collars. I never did the butterfly collar things, but still have no problem with bell bottoms. I still have no problem with bell bottoms.
Yeah, ladies look pretty sexy with them.
Well, ladies' bell bottoms and men's bell bottoms were a bit different. They were just slightly different. First they weren't as big, but and in fact that style came from Navy, the Navy button-up pants. They had bell bottoms, so it was easier to roll them up ostensibly so they can get down on their hands and knees and scrub the decks and what have you. But in fact, I think they still wear bell bottoms, but it's a Navy thing. So yeah, Jim Dockrell says now it's relaxed cut Wranglers and t-shirts. Yeah, yeah, basically. I mean, the only person I have to impress is my wife, and she's wearing pajama bottoms and an old t-shirt herself. So we're pretty lax around one another.
Well, this speaks to the thing we've talked about in the past, where um, if you look at old photos, people, even if they only had one good set of whatever,
Hmm.
they still look distinguished. Number one, think black and white, even the color photos, but um, they looked distinguished. Ever since the invention of the pocket cell phone, the could you imagine in the future? This was grandma and she's doing duck face like you were saying
Oh yeah,
one time.
oh yeah. There's got to be
It's so
a lot of embarrassed grandmothers out there in a few years.
it's like neither there's no dignity, quality, I hate to call it that, or presentable, sort of like stoic.
Hmm.
None of that, all that went out the window.
Yeah. There was a certain amount of dignity you were supposed to have because remember, photography was still relatively expensive back then. It wasn't the instant click, take a look at it. Don't like that one, delete, click. Let's just take 6 of them and I'll delete the ones I don't like. There was none of that. You had to plan it out. You had
Mhm,
either 12, 24, or 36 pictures in your camera and you saved it.
mhm.
You weren't taking a picture of your food. You were taking a picture of car crashes or something like that.
Yeah,
You saved it. And then you didn't know what you had until you took it down, got it developed, and saw the prints and went, oh man, dad's thumb's in this one too.
there's I don't know if you've ever hunted down, you probably have because we have talked about this roughly, but if you've ever hunted down on the internet archival photos and such of your hometown and this and that, and how many it might have or might not have and all that. But one interesting, so there's a bunch of sites that are Miami based sites on
Hmm.
Facebook where they have a ton of old photos and really cool things. But Sweetwater, not so much.
Yeah.
There is an aerial photo of Sweetwater in the distance, taken from what would be the overpass highway that they had at the time, which is still here, but it was a different, it was smaller and whatnot. Um, from an airplane, and you can see Sweetwater in the distance where it's barely noticeable, but it's there. Across the
Hmm.
way is what is the used to be an airport and
Hmm.
now is a university and whatnot. Um, they have that, and they have a few sundry little pictures, but a lot of the photographic is just simply not there.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of, and you try to look, and I have, and but anyways, to tell you why I was bringing this up, there's one such issue of no photos um, of a place that used to be up and running in the 80s called Castle Park.
Hmm.
And it was kind of like a Pirates Park sort of theme where you could play mini golf and go karts and like
Like a theme park, kind of, sort of.
it was a theme park. And
Oh,
they
okay.
built a castle with four towers on each corner, and it had a drawbridge. And you, all the kids would walk in through the drawbridge into the inner sanctum of the castle, and inside the castle was a game room. So you had
Mhm.
all your video games and whatnot, and you could play your video games. They had the Trons, they had, Pac-Man, and it was just, and they
Right.
sell pizza and they did parties. And then you'd walk to the back, and that was your mini golf area and your baseball thing and your whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Searching around, I found one guy, one guy with just a handful under 8 or so photos of Castle Park,
Yeah.
and he only did what kids used to like mostly is the go kart part phase of it. So it's
Yeah.
showing him with the go kart, and some guy sent him a overview flyby of
Hmm.
the area, but it's so darn grainy and washed out, but it's there. So that's all the evidence on the internet
Right.
at this date and time of Castle Park as far as visuals. And you can see the castle on the overhead video
Hmm.
or image and the little towers, but it's so grainy, it's not even, but it's there at least.
But so there are lots of online repositories for old photos of Miami, but nothing for Sweetwater, basically.
Sweetwater is, I've had to go on newspapers
Hmm.
and I've been able to draw um, a bunch of articles from back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, and I have family articles and family photos of Sweetwater,
Right.
but it's not comprehensive in terms of what was going on in the area.
Yeah.
It's funny,
Um,
but that's
it was about, I can't remember now if it was last week or if it was week before. I got saddened by something. And I think I may have mentioned it in one of our hangouts. There's a guy here, a local historian by the name of Ben True, Trewe. And he had a huge archive of photos on PhotoBucket of this city, Medford, and the surrounding area. Just photos dating all the way back to the late 1800s and early 1900s. And just photos of the town, the city, and the things that went on and were happening. The first bridges built across the river. And, I was telling you about this hardware store here in town that is still around. Well, he had a photo of it from like 1917, on this corner of this building, Hubbard Brothers Hardware. Oh, cool. They're that old. And now it's out here on the main highway. It's about 4 miles, 5 miles down the road from me. But Photo Bucket changed so much that entire, and it was a huge repository of old pictures. It's just gone. And if he's put it somewhere else, I haven't found it yet. And I mean, I've looked for him on Flickr and all this other stuff because there were a lot of real cool pictures from back in the day. And much like yourself, I live in my hometown. You know, I was born in this, I was born 7 miles down the road. That building isn't there anymore either. But it's weird to think of the evolution of the area that you've been in that we don't even really notice. It's a slow motion remove and replace type of a deal. It's more dramatic where you are because small buildings are being bulldozed and replaced with huge high rises and all. But here it's the little subtle things. You know, a sandwich shop that was open on this corner is now gone. And it's like, dang, whatever happened to them? They were the best place in the valley and all this other good stuff. It's
There,
just kind of strange. And having that repository to go back and look at, to just, oh man, I remember that. I remember that fire station being there. Oh man, I remember that was the old bus depot that is now gone and all that other good stuff.
do you have a historical society?
Yes, we do. And they have a lot of photos. In fact, that photo I've shown you several times of my great 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 grandfather and grandmother together, I got that through the Historical Society. Um, and I was a member for quite a while. We also have the Genealogical Museum here,
Mm.
and that depends heavily on people bringing records to them because it's all on the genealogy of people, not so much the area. So,
It takes a little bit of just someone compiling stuff, but it also during the era where people live, of
mhm,
people documenting at best saving stuff,
mhm.
and then it takes someone years later to collate it all into one thing. And
Well, that was the sad part of it because Ben True had done that. He had put everything together in what he thought was a free online archive. And each photo had a story about it, where it was, what it was, and when it was, uh, whether it was still up, still existed, or if it was long gone, or what happened to it, or what have you. And then Photo Bucket changed. Now, I don't know if he put any of this stuff up on the internet archive or not, or if anybody has suggested it to him. I don't know, but it was a real easy source because if I searched for something like, let's say, um, Medford City Hall construction, and then went over to images, I would see pictures from his library come up, from his repository. They
was
would
it
come up.
was it a lie?
Oh yeah, he had tons of photos. He had thousands of photos in
Thousands?
this. Oh yeah. I
And
mean,
where
folder upon folder upon folder upon
and
folder
where did he get them from?
from all kinds of sources. People would send him photos. He would research, find pictures in the newspaper, and then go to the newspaper and buy a copy of that print. Or he'd go to the Historical Society and get a copy of that print and put it online.
So that was
He
his job.
he would give credit, and get permission to post these photos. And Lord knows how many he had. He didn't have permission to post online, but he wanted open access to all of this stuff to everybody.
Yeah,
So that if you were some high school kid who was doing a research paper on the history of the Barkley Ranch, I just
it
pulled
was
the
there.
name out of my hat. It was there, or at least something. There was some sort of a reference to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that way people can actually go back and
Hmm.
for whatever project or book they're writing or any number of things,
Hmm.
they can research. I mean, that's part of the world that we live in. And so, if a lot of these historians would never have written anything,
Hmm.
you know, not to mention the stuff that's gotten lost, but for goodness sakes, it's a
Yeah.
miracle.
Yeah.
My dad did a lot of this sort of thing, but his focus was a different story. It had to do
Right.
with Cuba, assassinations, names of people lost,
Yeah.
names of people executed, scenarios where people were in some sort of battle or whatnot, just a series of things. And he had everything.
Mm.
Uh, and I have the stuff now digitized. But one of my projects is that I'm going to somehow put all that up online. It was online at some point, but it no longer is. But he did take CDs
Mm.
of all the information and send them off to different libraries across the country. So he did that on his own. So he
Good,
sent off,
good.
and books too. His book, he sent it off.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that and it's good with digital. You could just send that off,
Right.
and it's all contained in there.
Mhm.
Um, so without people doing such things,
Right.
um,
Right. And, resources like the Internet Archive are a great source of that kind of information. I mean, you've posted stuff up there, correct?
yeah,
It
I've posted a video that I made, which I'm gonna redo. I've got ideas too. I got a lot of work on that because I have to put everything up that I
Mhm.
have at least.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah, I have done.
it's open and available to the public, right?
Yeah, I have a
So that
book.
anybody that's researching your last name would find it anyway.
Uh, if they look for
Mhm.
my name, if they look for Escajedo family,
Mhm.
or just Escajedo, they'd have to sift through, but they'd find it.
Mhm.
I published a book, the only book I've ever done. It's a reference book because it's a genealogy book, and I put it up on, as well as the Internet Archives. I put it up on Google Books for free.
Mhm.
Um, I opened up an account and I put it out for free because the idea is just to have the stuff and have it copied and kept, and whoever wants to keep
Yeah.
the thing, it's just to leave it out there so it can
Yeah.
exist.
Make it available. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's So I have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg says, try contacting him and see where he put them. I may do that. It's just not been number one priority here lately. It's just it's something that I just discovered because I thought it was still up and running. And I was going to look for a picture. I was going to look for that picture of the hardware store and went to that bookmark that I have. And it's just like, oh no, it's all gone. It's gone. Now it's a subscription service.
Just a tip.
And, you
Just a
know,
tip.
mhm,
There's a site called. It just left my mind. There's a site,
mhm,
archive.com or archive something. Um, Not Internet Archive.
right.
And what it is you take a page.
Mhm.
Let's say you're somewhere and you see the information you like and you want it to be saved forever. You take the URL, you insert it into that site and press save. And
Okay.
it will take a screen snapshot into that site and
Yeah.
it'll be there. It's not going to be a linkable thing. It's just going to be,
Right.
or like the buttons won't work. It's just a snapshot of the site.
Okay. 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 Yeah.
It's a very useful, if you see an article or something that's of interest that you don't want to lose, you don't want to download it into you could do that, and it
Mhm.
has that effectively
Yeah.
saved,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
kind of like archives.com, but in a different sense.
All right. I'll check it out. I'll check it out. So, let's see. Prelinger Archives Wayback Machine. Yeah, the Internet Archives Wayback Machine as well. The problem is there are certain sites that it doesn't archive, and PhotoBucket happens to be one of them. So it would have been cool to have been able to go back and get all that stuff. And he may have put it somewhere else. I mean, I just haven't done that. I haven't dug that deep for it yet because it's not a super high priority. I was just sad to see that one archive gone. That doesn't mean he didn't put it somewhere else. I just haven't found it yet. So
There used to be Google papers or Google
Google.
newspapers.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's still around, but I remember at some point it was easy to navigate, and since then I couldn't quite figure it out as easy. But originally, you could search newspapers so far into the past, it wasn't even funny. It was amazing.
Yep. They still have it. Google News Archive search. News.google.com. It's still there.
But
Access the past.
let me see if they fixed it. Well, it kind of looked like that, but they had some sort of timeline thing at the top.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, you have to know what newspaper you're searching for.
Before it wasn't like that. You could actually it's before it was different.
Yeah, no doubt.
They've made it more difficult.
Well, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother podcast. But that's one of my pet peeves is changing things just for the sake of changing it. If
Yeah.
you're not, if it's working, why are you messing with it? Just leave it alone. It's fine. Oh, but it would look so nice with a little bit over here that spins around and you click on that. No, it works fine. Leave it alone.
They're always tweaking it.
Yeah.
The problem is that new people come around
Yeah.
with new ideas and
Hmm.
decide to refresh
Hmm.
a theme because they think that everything old is passe. And there is
And
an argument to be made to fix some things to
I,
update, but
I will agree with that. But just changing something for the sake of changing it, I think to me is ridiculous. You know, there's nothing wrong with something that works. It's like reshaping a hammer. It's there to do one or two jobs. Drive in a nail, and I'm talking about a framing hammer. Um, I I I want it to drive a nail, or I want to flip it around and pull a nail. It doesn't have to have tape measures built into it. It doesn't have to have wings so when I throw it at somebody, it glides on a straight path. It doesn't have to have LED lights. It doesn't have, I want a hammer. It's got two jobs: drive a nail or pull a nail. Quit
check,
trying to change it,
check
you
this
know.
out. Check this out. So check this out. Check this out. So one time at a girlfriend's house, her uncle was there, and I'm there at her house, and he was fixing something, and he says to her, "Hey, do you have a hammer around here? Hand me a hammer." She says, "Oh yeah, I have a hammer." And he's trying to work on the thing and stuff, and getting gritty and stuff. And she comes over and hands him this little pink hammer
Mhm.
like that. And she said, "Here you go." And he looked at it. And I was just sitting there watching the scene, and he looked at it was like a little pink hammer. So he asked for a hammer, and in his mind, a hammer
Mhm.
is a hammer, like anybody.
Yeah.
But she brought him this little thing with the pink wraparound thing,
Mhm.
and it's a cute little thing. So it was a hammer made for, and she picked that one out for sure. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, and again, I'm talking about a framing hammer. Okay, Jim wants to get in here. Well, what about a Martinez hammer? I need a framing hammer. You know, how you going to hit your thumb in the dark with no lights, Mark? See, my dad raised somebody who knows you don't go swinging a hammer in the dark, especially if you're the one holding the nail. That's what kids are for.
you'd ask her for a tape measure, and she
Hmm.
had. She'd bring this little thing. I don't know if it had like a little kitty thing on it, but
Hmm.
it was like you look at it's like the toy equivalent of all of it. It's like holy crap.
I can't complain about stuff like that. If there's a market for it, sell it. See, to me, that is a tool company that is trying to branch out, and they had at least one customer. So, if you're a tool company and you make, oh, I don't know, a black tool bag with pink piping, and somebody buys it, okay, great.
You got that? You got a drill? You got an electric drill? Here comes it. The little ones that, with like an double
Yeah.
A battery in it.
And, a lot of it is a joke as well. For instance, talk about tape measures. Linda has a tape measure. It's one of these cloth tape measures for measuring yardage and what have you.
Mhm.
And see this, my Canuckastani friends? I do have metric stuff in the house. Um, it but it's a little tape measure. You push a button and it retracts. It's not one of those automatic things, but it's a sheep. It's somebody felted up a little sheep and embedded that tape measure in it. So she picks up this little sheep and pulls that and measures and what have you. And her fiber friends, her knitting and spinning and weaving friends are like, that is so cool. It's like, hey, great. So, but it's just like now, Steve here, because people want updated websites. And I agree. People want updated websites. But that doesn't mean you have to change all of the functionality of the whole thing. You want to update it, make it updated, but make it work. Now, that's your job and you do it quite well. But changing things just for the sake of change, to me, is it really an improvement? No. Especially when you can't find what you used to being able to find, you know.
Well, that's the main issue. Like,
Mhm.
things that take one step in certain sites now take much more. And it's like, give me a break. But you can't give them input because they go and do it anyhow. So it's like, it's useless.
Okay, I got somebody splitting hairs with me over diction here. How do you pronounce that tool?
That's a tape measure.
Tape measure? Okay. I say tape measure. So maybe I do pronounce the a little
What
bit
did I
more.
say?
You said tape measure.
Yeah, okay.
And that's, that's fine.
And what did you
So
say?
Robin is over here saying, did you say measure?
Say it again?
I probably did. Tape measure. I
Tape measure.
probably did say tape
Tape
measure.
measure. You said tape measure. Measure.
Maybe I did.
Tape
But
measure.
again, you
Measure.
gotta remember my my mother, my grandmother were from Texas and my grandfather was from Oklahoma. So I still have a little bit of that floating around here in the background.
It's actually
So
using the A's properly. It's tap measure. That's the correct way to say it because if you consider the A's,
how anybody who is not a native English speaker learns to speak English fluently is beyond me. My hat's off to them. English is the weirdest language in the world because nothing makes sense.
have you seen that
Nothing
clip?
makes sense. What?
There's a guy
Which?
with a there's a guy with a it's one of those little quick videos, the
Uh huh.
upright ones. He's
Yeah.
with a ruler and he says, "Let's learn some English. It's very easy, as you'll see." And he taps the thing and he goes down the words.
Hmm.
I forget the words, but every word has a follow up word using
Hmm.
the vowels and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so the guy responds, and each response is wrong, even though
Uh-huh.
logically you would assume that
Yeah.
the vowels fit and they're it's hilarious as hell.
Yeah. I don't know how the OUGH, that spelling that of that, that suffix OUGH. There are at least 8 ways you can pronounce that. It could be oo as in through. It could be as in tough. It could be ow. It could be, I mean, there are a bunch of different pronunciations for that. How anybody makes sense of learning to speak English, I don't know.
It's a very
I
difficult
just don't know.
it's a very difficult thing because number one, you don't word it as it's spelled, not in every case, and in the cases that it's not, so this is not a good example, but like photo,
Mhm.
in reality, I know that the ph sound, but in reality, um well, photo is across the board. Like in Spanish it's with an f, photo,
Right.
photo, photo.
It is in French and it is in German as well.
Okay, but in English you have, again, this is a bad example. We have the ph insertion, which, I mean, photons, just
Mhm.
a number of different psychiatry, let's say.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of use of the, and yet it crosses. It's a bad example, but the point is that there's things that spell different than they pronounce,
Right. Right.
and
Yeah,
that's where your
absolutely.
problem is.
Now, Robin here is, but a lot of it comes from the languages we stole those words from. And yes, I use stole. She's like, OUGH. I've never heard of it. Okay. No, I'm talking about the OUGH, the sound that those 4 letters make. No, not on its own. But when you think of the word through or the word tough or bough, Bough, as in a branch of a tree, there's three different pronunciations of the same four letters right there. And there's at least five more. I just can't think of any right off the top of my head right there. You know,
And they're really not stolen. You said stolen. I mean, I know that you're. That's kind of
it was a
a
joke. Yeah.
but a lot of these words are cross pollinations, and it just goes and it becomes what it is. But English, for some reason, does a significant amount of things that don't, and I think French does too, where it sounds and spells completely different.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
about German.
because well, that's the thing about German is it's pronounced the way
It's
it
written.
looks, with a couple of exceptions. There are a few exceptions. EI you pronounce IE you pronounce E. Um, a U is oo. An A is an ah. So it's various, but it's if they don't have a word for something, they borrow it from another language and then kind of adapt it, or they just keep adding words to it. So, you'll have a construction company that is a subcontractor and it's an Angevergebiet, and it's like, what the heck? So, thank God we're not like that, because we have the word kitchen. We don't have to have cookpot place.
Um, just an aside within this. For some reason, it popped into my head. So our word of car, which
Uh-huh.
is also our word, or it can also be automobile.
Hmm.
Um, so in Spanish, at least in as far as I know, the Caribbean, and in particular in Cuba, you could say the equivalent of car, which is carro,
Hmm.
carro.
Hmm.
But they also say máquina, which is the equivalent of machine. And
Hmm.
if you look at them spelled, you can see that they're using the same letter, whatnot. But they're saying machine. So get in. Let's get in the machine. We're going to the hot dog stand. Um, so they use that, or you use car, and they can use automobile. In Spain,
Hmm.
they don't use car,
Right.
as in carro.
Hmm.
That's more of a this hemisphere situation. Um, but they do use coach,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
an actual coach, like a horse driven coach type thing. And so they
Hmm.
say, let's get in the coach, or in el coche. And these are all variations that are borrowed, because a
Hmm.
car for them is what you would pull, like a horse and wagon cart.
Right.
And so it's such an iconic thing for them that car doesn't play into. They understand it, but
Right.
they could get confused with some sort of horse-drawn cart or cart.
Right.
So they think of car as cart. So these are just variations and stuff as things start to get invented in the world. Train is train,
Hmm.
regardless, as an example.
But
Anyway,
train in Spanish is still train.
it's still train.
Okay.
Same difference.
Okay. Well, in Germany, it's auto, which,
Train?
for a car,
Oh,
it's
auto.
it's auto, auto,
Yeah.
which tells you right off the bat that it's an imported word, because no self-respecting German word would ever end with a vowel. If it ends with a vowel, it was borrowed from another language. That's your first clue. So you have photography, Fotographie, and that was borrowed from the French. Um, we're still talking about here, yeah, about English. Um, Jim Dockerel saying, "Why are all the seas and ocean Pacific pronounced differently?" Exactly. There are three seas in Pacific Ocean, or Ocean Pacific, and each one of those seas is pronounced differently, but it's the same letter.
And if you keep that, put
Oh,
that
sorry.
up, ocean in Spanish is virtually the same thing, océano. but it's
Mhm.
Oceano.
Mhm.
So ocean, Oceano. And it follows the same, and Pacific is Pacifico. So it follows the same
Okay.
trajectory.
I have a question. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. I have heard Pacifica.
Hmm.
Is there a difference between Pacifico and Pacifica, the meaning?
I don't know the rules like enough
Okay.
to. You'd have to present me with some sort of sentence that would make that
Okay.
click in my head, because I'm not
Okay.
that. I just know by looking at this, you know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, now we're going into specific. What is it
Yeah.
called? The linguistic rules, and there I'm a little bit. If, but I do recognize what I just mentioned.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have my limits.
Yeah. See, Jamie says the German language is so angry, though. It sounds angry. What did you say to them when you lived there, Mark? Just whatever I needed to say. I knew just enough German to be able to get around. And I could understand enough German to where Linda and I could watch German television and we could follow the story. We may not pick up every piece of dialogue, but we could follow the train of the story. But to be honest with you, the main reason we watched German television was to watch overdubbed American sitcoms to see who was doing the voices. And they had some strange people doing voices. I tell you what. You remember the TV show Golden Girls?
Mhm.
You
Yep.
remember Ma Sophie, the little old
Yep.
lady?
Yep.
The person they had doing her voice, I swear to God, sound like she must have like smoked 11 packs of cigarettes before she did the voiceover, because it was a low voice like this. You didn't know if it was a man or a woman. It was like, holy cow, man.
That's hilarious. I my it makes me think. So with the Germans and whatnot and the languages,
Mhm,
when I worked in the Everglades, I took tours of people, of whole groups together. So
mhm,
I got to see groups, and at least in that scenario, how they behaved
mhm,
and interacted.
mhm,
And I was always surprised at every rule that I would lay out at the beginning of the tour, explaining it.
mhm.
They would follow it to a T.
Yeah, that's very much, that does not surprise me.
When I would tell them, okay, now everybody one row at a time and stuff, they would get out one row at a time. It just like, and I'd give the signal, and they were all waiting attentively for
Mhm,
the precise. But mind you, although I was in this position as the tour guide and conductor of the boat,
mhm,
if I were one in the crowd, I'd be much more disorganized. Because I'm the one giving the you know,
mhm.
the instructions. It's a different story. So I recognized in them that they were quite, you know, prepared to follow
Yes.
the norms of the not to. I'm not going to name the other groups, but there are some, and it was back to back. I could see, and it's due to cultural. There's all sorts of reasons for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
there were some people that I would tell them, "All right, and now we're going to get off one rod," and they'd all jump off the boat,
yeah.
falling. Sometimes even the boat wasn't at the dock yet. People were jumping over, barely making it to the dock. And it's like
Like,
some
dude,
chaotic.
do I stink or something? You got to bail that fast?
It was some chaotic scene. No, it's just the way different regions, just how it's all culminated.
Hmm.
Depends on how much rules are followed and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I saw trends across the way with that. So
Hmm.
it's funny.
Robin, no, I meant Estelle Getty. Yes, I meant Estelle Getty. And her voice, obviously, her voice was nothing like that. But oh my gosh,
Now, if you were to
it
take
was
one of those
hilarious.
people
Hmm.
from the other chaotic groups,
Yeah.
because that helps a lot when you do tours like that for like 10 years and you're watching people, and plus you're doing your job, you learn a little bit of these um, sort of, you know, the extent of which people, uh,
Hmm.
if you were to take one of the people from the chaotic tours and place them into, now I never did this, but my thinking is, and place them in the midst of an organized sort of following the trajectory rules group, I'm sure that due to the peer pressure of that person's surrounding, that they would conform to the best of their ability to follow what the cue from. But if you group a group of people that are quite the, what do you call it,
Very
willing to,
stringent, very strict.
no, like chaotic or whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
If they're all, they'll just be chaotic. But if you introduce a chaotic into a batch of, they're looking around and they're saying, well, wait, we're, but if they're numerous, the chaotics are numerous, then they're just going to do their chaotic thing because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mob mentality as well. I
Mm-hmm.
got to get out of here before you do, and that kind of thing. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of it is trying to be the alpha dog. I'm going to get off of here first.
Yeah.
Even though I'm the last one here in the back row, I'm getting off first. I don't know. I don't get that. But some of it is cultural. Being unprepared and being disorganized is really looked down on, at least in Germany.
Yeah.
So much so that if you run out of gas on the side of the road, they'll give you a ticket for it. You should never run out of gas. You have a gas gauge, go get gas before you run out. You'll get a ticket for running out of gas. I mean, it's craziness, but what can you say?
Yeah.
So they look down on people who are that way chaotic. And if you say, form a line and we'll get on and fill up each row, that's exactly what they're going to do,
That's exactly what they do.
because they figure you know what you're doing. You're the one in charge, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to enjoy this, but they know that there are certain rules along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing.
Until you get, well, even if you are on the Autobahn, I was going to say until you get on the Autobahn, then it's anything goes. But even if you do get on the Autobahn, if you're not doing 140 miles an hour, your butt better be over in that right lane.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be passing somebody to where you got to get over in the left lane, you better check your rear view mirror. There better not be anything behind you for a mile. Because if you see a little black dot on the horizon, wait, because it'll pass you at about 140 miles an hour before you can even get your turn signal on to change lanes. So, but there are rules. It's just, it seems like there are no rules. That was an experience driving that Autobahn, though. My God.
Yeah. Here in the United States, even so, if I can't speak for every other place in the United States because I have since then seen people complaining of how people drive everywhere. I used to think it was a Miami thing, but I did live in LA as well.
It's a US thing.
Okay, so I will say, and I can't judge other countries that I have not been to, although I did go to Mexico. But in any event, what I'm trying to get at is that Miami has influx from all sorts of places.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wild sprinkling that is more noticeable to people anywhere in the United States coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a multitude of different little factors blended in
Mm-hmm.
that creates a noticeable, wow, this is different. At least I've seen that from people's reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yet, within that, there's, and you can see it, rules that are followed American style,
Mm-hmm.
which is there's leeway, but in some things there's no leeway. There's sort of a shift, but even here, this is a little bit more of a wild thing, different, and yet even so, people have. So what I'm trying to get at is, we're not an in between necessarily between like the extreme of like perfect, like what you're saying with
Mm-hmm.
the, but we're also not wild abandon.
That's Italy. That's Italy. Some friends of Linda, um, uh, they were going to Italy on vacation while we were stationed over in Germany. They were in her unit. They rented a car when they got to Italy, and the guy literally asked them, "Okay, do you want a car with a horn or do you want a car with brakes? You couldn't have both. Which do you want?" And he thought, I think I'm going to need brakes. So he said, yeah, give me the one with the brakes. And they didn't feel too good about it. He said after 2 hours of driving, he wished he'd have had the horn because it's just total chaos from everything that they said. Italy is just chaos. France was no slouch. I mean, there were certain places that were chaotic, but for the most part, it wasn't too awful bad. Germany, very, very regimented, very, very regulated. Over here, we're a bit more expressive, we're a bit more open. There are exceptions, but people are a little bit more laid back.
Slightly.
But on the Autobahn, everybody's Ricky Racer, and it's competitive as heck. I mean, you're there, you're on the Autobahn to get from A to B, but you're there to get from A to B in as short a time as possible. And how dare you try to pass me? Don't you dare try to pass me. And that's just the way it is. It's extremely competitive.
I don't think I want to go that fast.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. In Germany, the cars are regulated to 155 miles an hour. They won't go any faster. Some of them do, not necessarily legal, but there is no speed limit. You can go as fast as you want to. But the roads are made for it. By the same token, they don't have fender benders. They have like 62 car pileups. You know, they don't happen very often, but when they do, oh boy.
Some wild stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well, do we have any other things we want to before we wrap up?
Let's see. Let me look down here. Jamie makes an observation. The word beer seems to be the same or very similar everywhere. There's only a few. There's only a few places I can think of where the word for beer is different. I mean, Spanish it's cerveza.
Mm-hmm.
But in France, Germany, it's beer. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, beer. Or a variation on that. It may be spelled different. Austria was the same. But we never got down into Italy or Spain. We wanted to, we just never did.
I think that there are words like that that may not fall into, but there's a lot of words that cross. Depending on what the scenario or
Yeah.
time frame or culture or introduction of some sort of item or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I say English steals from other languages because that's kind of sort of what we do. I mean, a lot of it comes in from interacting with other cultures. This is their word for it. Okay, well, we're going to anglicize it and make it easier for us to pronounce because a lot of us can't roll our R's and things like that. But it's basically a Germanic language, so that's where the root of most of our words come from. But what can you say?
It's its own thing
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, but it's derived from mostly German.
Mm-hmm.
All of Western Europe written in Latin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With actual, the actual letter usage that we use.
Mm-hmm.
But we have borrowings across the board from all civilizations, really,
Mm-hmm.
because there's things that just simply get invented or passed on one place or the other, and it just piles up to end up. But
and interaction with other cultures. I mean, we've taken words from the Romance languages, from the Slavic languages, from the Nordic and the Scandinavian languages, from Russia. I mean, vodka is not an English word. I mean, we've taken all kinds of words from all kinds of different languages. We just anglicize them to make it easier for us to say them. And we're not even going to discuss the Welsh, are we, Jamie? No. Because even the Welsh can't understand what they're saying. So somebody earlier said something about you can't play Scrabble in Germany because there's not enough tiles. Try it in Welsh. It's all consonants.
They're very ancient as far as I wonder if well, let's not get into that. It'll draw, and I don't have enough information to. I've not looked into that, but I was going to say I wonder if there's a continuum in the way they write and speak. I know it's Celtic to I mean that's what it is, original, but I don't know if there what the changes would have been across time. But we don't. Let's not get into that because that's going to be
Yeah,
like
I
very
don't know.
long.
I don't know enough about it. I really don't. I don't know enough about it to know.
Yeah,
Not my field of study. I had a hard enough time with English.
but it definitely sounds different. You know,
Hmm.
it is a different, unique thing. But in any event, so are there any other things before we start
Nope,
to?
that was it. Let's go ahead and wind her up, or wind her down, as the case may be.
All right. So, well, we hope you
We've
enjoyed
got
it.
the hiccups.
We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here at the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. And if you're wanting to have like a podcast downloaded to your system, you can do that too by going to the way to the Trampled Underfoot podcast website, which is .com, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and pressing that Wayback Machine button. And we have a great selection there of entertaining stuff that you can check out. And we have a site or a page over on Facebook, which is by the same name, Trampled Underfoot Podcast, Facebook. And we usually post little links here and there on videos and um, images that we may or may not talk about concerning the shows we have that evening. So check that out as well. We're also sponsored by.
Harneal Media, your web source, your web solution. Talk to Steve Nealon over there. He's the man with the plan. He knows what he's doing. He does it very, very well. He's very competitively priced. And, it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to just build up your web presence by creating a website and have a page that you can post to, a page that you can update as you create more or as you think of more off the top of your head and want to spread your wisdom to the world, he can do that. If you'd like to get a little bit deeper into it and develop a web store where you can sell your items or offer your services to the public at large, he can help you do that. If you want to create merch, he can hook you up with a print on demand company that'll take care of all of the inventory, collect all the funds, and take care of all the taxes, all of that good stuff. All you have to do is sit back and watch the orders come in. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL media.com, the sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a peaceful one. Um, and nothing will catch you here. Same time, same channel. I'm not gonna say bat channel and bat time.
You just did.
Oh darn it. We wish you guys a good one, happy one. We'll catch ya. Laters.
Peace.